Yo, what's up, guys? I think that what I've kind of done here is reduced myself down. I'm going to call this essentially me. I got this point here, if you recognize it, but I've actually sort of crafted it to be something fairly unique. I kind of was working off of, Lucky Rabbit's Foot's kind of thing, but I got this fawn's foot. And then this obsidian point. This is what I'm obviously going to give to one of my nephews. You can see his name on there. But basically, just a homemade razor blade. I mean, it cuts open a box like it's butter, and it's actually very satisfying. I think what ultimately matters is the fact that it has like an insane grip that feels really good in your hand, and your hand kind of conforms to the whole thing. It's very ergonomic for however wild it looks, but maybe things in the wild are the most ergonomic. And the only time in which things that are artificial kind of take on that shape is when they're just in an ideal plane. So maybe this is kind of reaching all the way around somehow. Predator and prey, um, whole kind of night and day sort of thing right here. But yeah, so again, I'm calling this essentially me. You know, what can I reduce myself down to here? And then maybe I can kind of be like that as well. And I got this totem, you know. My most recent depiction of this is I was thinking that it looks like a dragon. Like the shield could be like a head, and then the tail is like the sword that comes out. But as you can see, I've sort of given this thing like what it reminds me of now is like saffron, you know. Um, just the way that these sort of black lines kind of are something that's like so subtle on this gold, but they stand out so well. So this is again essentially me. I kind of think the art is sort of like the beginning and the end. It's kind of where you can define yourself, but also kind of find out exactly how other people see you. And then somewhere between that space is where you can sort of figure out um, what is basically something that only defines you. And I think that once you kind of find that, you're much more likely to defend it because then you know that it's essentially you. And if nobody's going to stand up um, for you, then you better stand up for yourself, kind of thing. So, kind of finding out where that edge is, where the idea of excusability is. Where does that all relate to you being something eternally? Does this actually make sense? Well, does it have to make sense to anybody but you? And obviously coming to terms with what can you do with these things. I mean, I'm pretty limited to right here in this stage, but I mean, looking at it, I almost feel like where else would I want to go? Just looking at this right here. So yeah, that's kind of the concept. Concept art, concept tools, that place where perhaps it's not necessarily about who is the best at what, but it literally is just about who will defend themselves to the end. And then in that way, you discover what nobody can take away from you. And sort of in that eternal realm, then you've sort of kind of decided what you will be for all eternity, And then I think that's probably the most wild testing place, right? Is this idea of luck and chance and of progression and of idea, I think. And then obviously the most efficient and effective thing is what can get you there basically with the least amount of it. And I'm pretty reduced down here, with these goods, but it's basically like a fight, because I know what it took to craft these items. And I mean, when you're doing art, it really is a battle of emotions and moods. And I like to think that changing your mood really is the greatest sort of feat that anybody can actually accomplish. And I think that I did accomplish that with these objects. So, I mean, what's most memorable about this is obviously that unboxing of my sort of gold ring. But the funny thing is that my mood didn't necessarily drop that entire time. It was pretty intense as to how I was able to sort of hold myself from regretting anything. And it felt like I was doing something the entire time, sort of just like this. It felt like I was speaking on behalf of some sort of essence that was basically very pertinent to life. And I feel like I was actually able to express it in the end, and it sort of like wrapped up the entire thing, and it sort of made this whole wild thing sort of natural and gave it this idea that almost made it feel like I really was sort of like a statue there for a moment, is basically kind of where that resulted in. But yeah. And I'm sure that there's much more that you can sort of speak about on behalf of this sort of object here. The point almost kind of comes back towards you like another thumb, you know what I mean? It's like now I have like a third arm or something. Got a little Shiva going on. Yeah, and then this is just basically like, I mean, the crafting of this was completely how fast could I go? And I think, again, quickness relates to the idea of newness. I think that there's something really is there. But obviously, I didn't have much to work with. And so it was really finding that sort of pacing with this idea of creating something that had this certain amount of speed that I wanted. But obviously, I was able to recognize reservation when I needed to so that I could actually sort of kind of follow through with where this thing was taking shape. And I feel like I succeeded with it. So probably one of the hardest things I've ever carved. But I feel like everything on there is totally unique. I didn't look at anything, with either thing. Basically, it was just completely kind of up in my head. And now I think that they're sort of universally competitive. So, in that it's things that I feel like I could put value on basically, and put value on myself anywhere in the world compared to anything. So, and this sword on here, it's really completely unique. It's like a blend of almost multiple kinds of swords. If you look closely enough at it, it's like the handle sort of curves, but it's got this really Western style blade. Um, it's really interesting and really unique, and I really enjoyed how it turned out. So I also saw like a sun and moon kind of thing in there. You know, a star and a moon is the sort of shape changes as you kind of reorient the figure. And you know, now it's kind of like my dragon's egg kind of thing coming out of this white jade, and it looks really really neat when you shine a light sort of through it. It kind of glows and gives this kind of ominous feeling to it, you know. And obviously it says Jet on it because this is what I'm going to be giving my other nephew for Christmas. So these are my Christmas presents that I kind of just finished working on. And I really do just like this underwear. This is, again, As We Move, is where this underwear comes from. And it just feels like second skin, basically, you know what I mean? Reminds me of this story that I once told about this futuristic kind of race of people that I wrote while I was up in Logan. Um, but I really do think that it's a great underwear, and especially for this kind of posing and things like that, it really does allow for me to hit all the angles that I want while kind of covering everything at the same time that I want to. Getting some real authentic jade was actually like one of the most weirdest kind of scammy things I've ever tried to do, because it was just like everything comes from some weird unauthorized kind of like place, almost like trying to purchase like really fashion forward brand stuff. There's just so many scams, but at the end of the day, it's like almost like these high-end fashion brands are a scam in and of themselves, and it kind of just reflects this nature of like, what are you willing to try to defend, you know? But if you're going to go that far, then you might as well sort of like brand yourself. Kind of something that I've also felt like is relevant to me these last few days. So anyways, that's kind of the nature of these objects and where they come from. You know, just a lot of wandering um, in real space and sort of, you know, as close as we can get to that imaginary space, kind of on the internet and whatever else. Um, you know, sort of like it's just kind of gathering something to hold on to after sort of just kind of realizing just how mixed up the world is. I got a new pose for you. There you go. That's as close as I get to the ballet. All right. I think that's good. You know, at the end of the day, though, everything really is just a guess. But if you're going to hold on to a guess, then you might as well make it something that if people question, then there really is nothing you can have faith in if people don't accept that part of yourself. And then I think it can always be something that no matter what the other side is, you can always take it to the end.